Hi.
What's up?
I know I asked this already, but how's everyone doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Yeah? How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Y'all ready for this? Cool, me too. Okay. So, I actually printed out a few of these introductions. They were outside, but I'm still gonna use it to read it off to introduce our panelists. So, welcome to SV's Black Student Union's panel. This is, I don't even know how to word this. Okay, so this panel is called Making Things Happen because these 4 amazing women here have been making things happen, yo. It's like, what? So, in honor of Women's History Month. Yes. So, I'm just going to introduce them one by one. So, we have Daryl Myntia Daniels. I like to call her Tia, but you may call her by her name. Daryl Myntia Daniels is a contemporary painter who explores the metaphysics of the Black woman as a microcosmic and multidimensional organism. She reveals the energy and spirituality of her figures through colorful and expressive marks, while constantly studying the humanity and beauty of Blackness. Daniels' work is rooted in the acceptance of her natural hair, her experience as a minority gymnast, and Black women's empowerment. Her artistic style is inspired by her research in neuroscience and examines the relationship between our hair, our brains, our bodies, and our natural world. Daniels was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. She has been creating art since her early childhood and began commissioning portraits at her local hair salon. She received her BFA in painting at Ohio University in 2013. After that, Daniels received a merit scholarship to attend the School of Visual Arts, where she got her MFA in Fine Arts in 2016. Daniels' work has been shown in places like the Kennedy Art Museum, the Untitled Space, and the Whole Gallery. She recently illustrated and edited a children's book titled My Flipping Yaya, if any of you guys have seen or heard from her last. Yeah. Which is a colorful book that teaches children to reach for their goals and is a recipient of the Pacific Book Review Star for excellent merit. Daniels maintained her studio practice in the Bronx, New York, and is a member of the South Bronx Independent Artists Coalition. So let's hear it for Daryl Myntia Daniels. Up next, we have Najla Austin, or you can call her Naj. Naj Austin, CEO and founder of Ethel's Club. Naj is a real estate and tech entrepreneur with over 6 years of deep experience in building, operating, and managing small businesses from the ground up. She was previously head of operations at a venture capital-backed hospitality company and head of growth at a real estate asset management company based in New York City. So, a little information about Ethel's Club. Ethel's Club is the first private membership club and workspace designed for people of color. They provide a physical and digital space for members to build, network, empower, and support one another. Ethel's Club is a brick and mortar answer created to grow a community that has traditionally been overlooked and isolated from public spaces. There are very few things created with people of color in mind. This is one of them. So let's hear it for Naj. Up next, we have Raquel Hazell. Raquel Alicia Hazell is an artist, writer, and designer from New York. She is a BFA graduate of the School of Visual Arts and is a self-identified Negro enthusiast. Her work exploring the relationships between artifacts in history, horror, and speculative fiction. Her practice relies heavily on academic research in the fields of sociology, ethno-linguistics, and mental health. Hazell is a founding editor of the New York-based independent publishing house SAALT, or S-A-A-L-T Press. Currently, Hazell works as a designer at Brooklyn-based studio Miko McGinty, yes, I said it right, okay, and the nonprofit art space AC Institute. So let's hear it for Raquel. And up next, we have B Rogers. B is a queer artist of color from New York City. Growing up experiencing poverty, she had lived in over 11 homes and attended 9 different schools before college, none of which held an arts course. B received a full scholarship to the School of Visual Arts BFA program in 2011, where she began her official creative career. She then received yet another full scholarship at graduating as one of the top in her class. That's awesome. It was rather difficult to create post-graduating in the lack of artist resources, mentorship, and creative space uptown and the Bronx. Taking matters into her own hands, she began COTH, or COTH, Creators of the Hood, early 2018 for creatives like herself to survive as artists. She began with 2 events. 1, a fully funded solo show for local Bronx artists, and 2, a group show with the opportunity for 10 different artists, most of which had also not received art courses in their lives, to show their work to peers. B had met at SVA for a one-on-one critique. COTH, or COTH, is currently building to offer cooperative creative space for artists in the hood. All right, so let's hear it for B. Pardon me, I shall be fanning myself throughout this whole entire panel because I am sweating. So, sorry, goodness, I'm too excited. Okay, so, let's start. Sorry. Okay. So I did introduce all of our 4 panelists, but I'm just going to open the ground for them to say anything else that I probably did not mention that they might want you guys to know about them. So I said it all. Okay. I feel like a creep now. Okay, so cool. I'll start off with general questions for all 4 of you to answer. You guys can go in any order that you like, or yes. So, what is it like to be a woman of color in your current field?
I'll start.
Yes.
To be a woman of color in my current field is incredibly difficult. I'm coming from the tech and startup space, which by nature, doesn't really make room for alternative voices. That being women. I think women receive 2% of venture funding every year. It's not a lot. Most of it goes to white men. So I think that, to kind of venture into that space, you have to have a lot more tenacity and determination, to make strides, because you don't really have people who are supporting you inside that industry. And so I think you have to definitely believe in yourself a lot more versus sort of being a mediocre white man who's ascended to power. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Every day you gotta kind of keep it pushing.
Yeah, I co-sign everything that you said. I think a lot of it is sort of like self-motivation, getting things started on your own. Definitely working and being intentional about making connections with people in your community, whether that's like women, people of color, that sort of thing, and not being afraid to ask for what you need, because most times people who have it a little bit easier, a little bit more confident, despite their mediocrity. And I think it's being intentional and speaking up for yourself and advocating for your worth is super important. And I think a lot of times women, especially women of color, are used to smalling up themselves to take up less space, which is something that you sort of have to unlearn if you want to start your own business or be productive in any meaningful way.
So when I was growing up, one of the main things my mom would tell me is, as a woman of color, as a girl of color growing into it, I have to work twice as hard in order to get half of what my counterparts have. And I grew up as a competitive gymnast, and she was my coach. And understanding that logic has literally, it's gotten me through everything. Just knowing I'm gonna have to work twice as hard, I'm gonna have to literally show off just to be on the same playing field as everyone else who doesn't look like me. And So as an artist, that's been like just having to put in the extra work, having to break through doors, having to connect with other women who are about that same thing. So like what these ladies said, just remaining confident and understanding that it's not fair, but you're gonna have to put in twice the amount of effort as everyone else, and that sucks. But it also kind of leaves you with some pride too, just knowing that I did this, you know. So, yeah.
I think for my field, it doesn't really matter if I'm a woman or a woman of color, because like anybody in the hood is looked at as scum. So I think what makes it hard is just being where I come from, and then my peers also being like disillusioned and thinking that they can't do it themselves. So yeah.
I have a lot to learn then. Okay, so for our next question, I wanted to ask, what's the most accomplished thing that you're proud of to date that's occurred to you? Any of you guys can answer.
I think for me it was the first book that I published. Shout out Marvin. So, and I think that goes back to sort of finding your community and finding your people, because I wouldn't have the confidence and also like the pressure to create something as well as I did if I didn't have somebody else's interests sort of riding on my back, somebody that I cared about, and like wanting to make a quality product for that person, because it being a collaboration, it's not just my name. If I'm working with somebody, if I'm working by myself, I can, if it doesn't work out, I just don't have to show anybody, you know? And I think that publishing my first book, doing it everything myself, the editorial, the design, the production, and that sort of stuff, was just a confidence boost. And I think that, like, I think you had mentioned that in terms of like confidence and being confident in yourself and what you're capable of, I do think that working as a woman of color in my field and seeing that there are people who are paying me, like I'm an employee of, that I can do their job better than them. And that finishing that book was definitely just like the taste of it, that I can far exceed everyone's expectations, even mine.
Anyone else?
I think for me, in this new company that I've just started, I kind of fell into it looking for something personally. I wanted to find a place where, you know, Black and brown people could comfortably gather. And, you know, I had a comfortable, cozy job, and I left it to start this company. And I think that it all kind of took a turn for the more confidence boosting when we were featured in the New York Times this past weekend. And I think that was sort of like, you know, from a writer, we had an amazing journalist write about us, her name's Morgan Jerkins, but also from a publication that, you know, can sort of transcend a company. So I think kind of having that validation was, I mean, it's still weird. It still doesn't feel like it happened. But I think that was sort of kind of like that inherent push where, like you mentioned, working twice as hard to get half as much, it felt like it finally paid off a little bit. So that was a good moment.
I guess I'm still working on my accomplishments. There's so much more that I want to accomplish. But I guess my greatest accomplishments so far might have been having my work published in this book that my mom and I made together, titled My Flipping Yaya. And after, so I illustrated and edited the book, and I was able to learn more about just working digitally and publishing and printing, and it ended up sparking a new idea, which is a new class that I'm just now starting on, which I don't want to speak prematurely about, but I'll be introducing it next week, which is a mark making and movement class and a stretch and sketch class. So this book kind of really inspired everything, and I'm excited about it.
Kind of with you on there are a lot of things I still want to accomplish. It's kind of a hard question for me. Even when you said this question weeks ago, I was like, how am I gonna answer this one? Maybe going to college. That's so generic, but maybe that. Because I had dropped out of college twice before going to SVA. And I also didn't read until I started college. So that would probably be it.
Shoot, I have to look through my life, see what I've accomplished. So for our next question, I wanted to ask to any of you four, have you faced any obstacles before coming to the position that you're currently in? Or any obstacles that you want to share that you feel is important to share?
I guess, well, you're gonna get rejected a lot, and I guess that's the greatest obstacle is not being discouraged and just finding other ways to weave around all of these no's and kicking down doors to make a yes for yourself. So yeah, those rejections, man, those are the those are the worst.
I feel like for me, the biggest obstacle would be definitely like working on my own mental health. Like post-grad, that first year was rough. That was really rough. Like definitely spent a whole year just like disillusioned and you get through it. I'm not scared. No, but that's real. I think that like starting therapy was like one of the best decisions that I had ever made. Because at least, even though it was for a short amount of time, it definitely like re-energized me and renewed within me that like I'm in charge of my life, no matter how many no's I get, and no matter sort of, and understanding that like burnout really shouldn't be something that you just accept as part of your life. Like, I think as artists we're always taught to just sort of like grind until you die, like you have to make it work by like sacrificing like your health, your eating habits, like working out, your like just general livelihood. And I think that sort of getting to the headspace where by taking care of myself, I can take care of what I need to do.
Okay. Well, I kind of wanted to add on to Raquel's. Even though I'm terrified now after what you just said, I agree, because now that I'm getting closer to graduating at SVA, I'm seeing that my routine of spending the night in my studio working is like too much. Like I started to cut down my hours because I was like, well, gotta get things done. So.
But I think it's also like finding a routine that's sustainable for you. Like that's not going to look the same for everybody. I know people who work half of the week, but then the rest of the week they work on their practice or whatever they want to get done. But it's trying to not feeling like you have to sacrifice like your mental and physical health to make something happen, because like what's for you is for you, so you're going to get it regardless.
for the next question. Sorry, I was kind of like reading this. What? Who wrote this? I did, sorry. So this is just a general question, yet again, for any of you four. Does what you do now contribute to the advancement, which, like, you guys already spoke on that, but, you know, of people of color in political and social instances leading towards a better future for us all?
I think for me, that's literally what I'm building my company on.
I know, I was
So
like-
I hope so. I mean, everything that we've kind of built is so that we can kind of push and change the narrative of what it means to be brown and gather. And how can we kind of do that from perspective of kind of one, creating that space, so being very intentional about the design team we're working with, the architecture team we're working with, we're all led by women of color, just so happens, which is great. And if you have, you know, those minds in a room trying to build a product for people who look like them, it tends to be a little bit more truer to what we are trying to build. So that combined with, you know, the programming of the space and trying to be very thoughtful so that we are kind of pushing it in that direction of advancing, you know, whether it's self-care personally or professionally. I think right now there isn't any one focused on that. And it was something I was missing from my life. So I hope that all the hard work that I'm putting in, that my team is putting in, will definitely accomplish that.
I guess my artwork would be my greatest contribution to people of color, which is representing people of color, representing, not only representing us, but I guess finding another way to tell you internally that you're something special. So there's a few science references or cosmic references in my work that ultimately are telling you that as a Black person you're important and this is your proof. And so yeah. Also with the classes that I teach, health is very important to me, and I think it's also very important to our communities. And so teaching young kids, you know, how to move their bodies and how to eat right and about nutrition and also about art, I think is very useful.
What I do definitely, that's Gabriel or Baby G. I'm not gonna ignore the elephant in the room.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He's an artist. He just made this.
Me.
Yeah. Just made this wonderful Picasso. And this is pretty much why I do what I do. And where we from, there aren't art spaces. It's a desert. So does it contribute to the advancement? Hell yeah. I hope so. Working on it. And I feel like, I'm not gonna say all art should, but yesterday I was at the MFA program's open studios and Gabriel, right. And it wasn't, there was very, like, it's kind of sad to see so many people pay tuition and be upheld to a certain degree and not deliver. And I feel like I'm done with that kind of art. Like, I don't want to hear about that kind of art. The art just for art's sake. So yeah. So trying to push that. trying to have people make things that are missing in the world, or make things to contribute to the world, and not just like landfill.
Yeah. I agree, because it was like one of the sub questions that I added on to this, which is, do you think it's important? Which, you know, you just said not all artists have to. And I myself kind of do both. Yeah, but I think that's, thank you for saying that, because I think it's important for all of us to know that, you know, it's not like our job unless we feel like very passionate about that, and that's what we're like focused on, and like, you know, it's just, I don't know how to word it, but you guys know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I'm not crazy? Okay, cool. Ooh, hope I'm not crazy. Okay, cool. So for the next question, I wanted to ask, what made you all decide to be who and what you are now? So aside from what you guys have said before, I know there has to be more. So do you have any future aspirations and what comes next, or you hope to come next?
I think I just want to, I gave myself like the soft goal of doubling my income by my birthday. Oh no! Very soft. We speaking it into existence because nothing has changed quite yet. But I do think that I guess I just want to be able to make a living doing something I find important. Like, I've worked jobs where like it may be somewhat comfortable, but that's because like I'm not very invested in the work that I'm making. Like, I didn't really get anything out of school ever until I found a reason to focus. And that focus was like something that I had to choose on my own, not because of like the coursework or any sort of like external expectations of that. So I think for me, it's sort of figuring out a way to set up my life in a, so that I can do something that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about like record keeping, which is basically what SALT is. It's publishing, but it's publishing for the sake of, it's an archival project. The idea that you should be able to, we want to amplify voices that don't necessarily get that space, and keep a record for, like, I don't want to live in a world where like everybody I know is making really important work and nobody's writing about it and nobody's taking care of it, and it just gets lost. You know, so I guess what's the most important for me moving forward, in whatever sort of shape that takes, is incorporating my passions and my career into my life holistically, that I can do that and sustainable for like long term.
I think for me it goes back to your previous question about our contribution to the advancement of people of color. What I hope for my future to be is that I've actually contributed, you know, and that it is this successful standalone thing that people are actually benefiting from, that I can actually, you know, prove true on what I'm trying to build. And a huge aspect of that is that there will be, you know, multiple clubs in different cities, so that it becomes sort of this network where that advancement that we're trying to build is spread out across the world. And that would be great if that happens maybe 20 years from now, 50 years. But that's sort of like my North Star. That's kind of guiding my business decisions, the things that we're doing specifically for our corporate location. You know, if I can actually build something that helps other people and I like doing it, everybody benefits, I think.
So for the future, in the near future for me, I would like to be able to move my movement and mark making class to all the kids in Harlem, and maybe not all the kids in Harlem, but to a lot of the schools within Harlem and in the Bronx. That's like a near goal for me. Roxette, just being able to do what I love and live my life off of that. That is the biggest thing.
That took a lot of my. Okay, cool. All right. I am so happy that I wrote this question. Okay, because it's like almost like playing devil's advocate. Is there anything you all wish you could have done differently in your process of getting to where you are now?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I feel very strongly about this. I wish that I would have trusted myself more. I don't know if you guys are familiar with something called imposter syndrome. Okay, so no.
What is that?
So I'm going to do a bad take on it, but it's basically the feeling that you are not qualified or meant for where you are in life. And it's something that I literally fight every day. Every conversation I have, I'm like, this person's busy, they don't want to talk to me, they're never going to give me money, they're not going to answer my email, and I kind of talk myself out of it, or I used to rather. And I only recently started understanding that what I'm building is cool, it's going to make you money, and it's going to make a lot of people happy. But it took me 27 years, I'm 27, so we're like months into this new process. But once I started actually asking for help and sort of trusting in myself, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's like a flood of all this good stuff, but it's definitely more positive. Even in terms where like I'll have a conversation with someone and they'll say like, oh, thanks for telling me about this, I'll introduce you to my cousin, you know, whereas before I didn't want to talk about it because why am I starting a company? Who am I? Like it just was this very weird thing that I struggled with. But since I started opening up to that, it's literally been life-changing. Just in terms of like the introductions we've gotten, all the positive things that have happened have been me literally like shooting my shot when before I would never, I was super like, I just would have never done it. And so if I could sort of impart any wisdom would be always ask for help, always ask for anything. I mean, why not? Worst case scenario, you're where you are. Best case scenario, someone writes you a check for $1 million, right? We're not quite there yet, but keep our fingers crossed. So yeah, I wish I had done that differently, but we've learned and we're 2019, that's what it's all about.
It's so funny to say, I feel like I'm still struggling with that.
We gotta just work on it every day.
Oh, this person's not gonna want to do a studio visit with me, I just won't ask. Or, you know, or, oh, this person's not gonna want to talk to me about hair, they like hair. And yeah, I still, and like I have to like talk myself up and like go through this like mini pep talk and amp myself before I can do that. And I wish that when I was in grad school here at SVA, I took more advantage of the networking opportunities rather than being so reserved and I guess kind of timid about what impression I would end up making on people, if they would care at all. So yeah, it's still a struggle.
To build on that a little bit, I have a younger brother named Najir. I don't know if some of you know him or not. But that's sort of always been his life motto, which has always kind of impressed me. When we were a little bit younger, he was not 21, he would get himself into concerts by DMing the rapper, and they were like, okay, yeah, you can come for a free ticket. And I was always like, how did you do that? He's like, I just asked, and I was like, that's so cool. And you know, here we are now, and I DM'd a semi-famous person on Twitter, and now she's our first investor, and that came from the tweet. But I was just like, might as well, and I still had like hesitation because I was like, she doesn't respond, but I'm like, what? How would anyone on Twitter know that? But you know, I still was cautious about it, and that's like the most like kind of shoot your shot thing that paid off. So I think everyone should always do that.
I definitely wish I had made more mistakes early on. Like, yeah, you can learn from other people, but you can't move forward without trial and error. And I was so scared to fail at some point. And I didn't launch anything until it was perfect, and then I ended up not launching anything in all these backed up projects. But starting is failing, so I wish I knew that early on.
I need to do that too. Because like at first I was so upset with some of the professors that would come at my studio like, so where's your project? I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm like, let me do my research and everything. I can't create until I know and I have clarity and all the information I need. And they're like, we need to see something. I was like, no. Now I know. Okay, I'm just gonna, yes. So for the next question, I don't know. Should I ask that question? No problem. What? Yeah, I should. At the end. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna ask those 3 last questions at the end. And okay. So now I'm going to ask specific questions for each of you guys. So I'm gonna start with B. I'm gonna do this thing like really fast where I go to B's slide. Okay. B.
Mm-hmm.
You already told us what triggered you to want to create Creators of the Hood and what your goals are for this program and where you want to see it go in the near future. But I know that you said this is like, it has nothing to do really with like just being a person of color. It's also about like people in the hood and their lack of resources, right? Okay, so I'm gonna skip that question too.
Actually, I think what, the POC versus non-POC?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that, I don't mind answering that.
All right, then let me ask. All right, so what I asked is, what is it like working with people of color versus working with non-people of color? Is there a difference in the outcome of projects you produce, miscommunications, misunderstandings, or are there positive outcomes? And does it matter?
Does it matter? It shouldn't. It shouldn't. But the reality is that it's a very different experience. And for reasons that I didn't know until I started making work at SBA. For one, unfortunately, before I started COF, I was making very political work. Unfortunately, it was a little more understood in the SBA space than in the hood because we're not intaking any information in the hood. So you can't really have a full 360 conversation in the hood. You have to explain different parts as you go. Whereas at SBA, people understood what happened in Russia, or they understood all this history shit that we didn't learn. Excuse my French. However, what I do love about showing my art to the hood is that there's so the people in SBA knew history, but there was still a certain like that doesn't apply to me type of thing. And when I show work to the hood, even though I have to explain all the parts, they're still down at the end, and I enjoy that more. You know, we're ready to get down and dirty to fix all these issues. You know what I mean? Which shouldn't only be for us to fix, but That's the big difference I see.
Cool.
Yeah, like more information, like non-POC have more information but less drive. POC have less information but way more drive.
Wow. And I also wanted to ask another question, because you are a leader, you have been a leader, and you still are, especially to me. Being that you are a leader within your community as well, do you have a message for those who plan to take a similar path?
Okay, wow, a leader. You know, I see a leader in everybody. So one thing that I would say to everybody is to learn as much as you can about what it is you want to lead. Don't leave room for any gaps, any holes, patch them up. Because I started as a political leader and I learned so much about politics that I joined a socialist party. So, not to say that I'm a socialist or identify as that, but I wanted to learn so much about it that I literally got inside of it. So I would say anybody who's trying to be a leader, learn as much as you can about what it is you're trying to lead. But thank you for the leader.
Nah, I mean, it's true. All right. Well, do you have anything that you wish to add on, Dee, especially?
Not at the moment, but I guess if anybody has any questions, I'll be free to answer.
By the way, we will have a Q&A session right after. So Raquel, go right to your slides. Raquel. All right. So this question I really do want to ask: what was your latest project that you've worked on?
Well, so there's my publishing side, and then there's, I guess, some freelance design work that I do. And the most recent project that I've done, I did all of the album art for this saxophonist, this jazz saxophonist, Imran Khan. He's Guyanese American, and I've known him for a while, and he just put out his first album, which is sort of like a Brazilian jazz, but you can hear it, you can hear that difference, sonically, where he's from in it. And I thought it was a cool project, so that was the most recent thing. So all the album art, the vinyl, and that sort of stuff. You can find it on Spotify. Yeah.
What's the name of this artist?
Imran Khan. Imran with 2 A's.
I got that just in case you want to look. Okay. Cool. So, I don't know if I want to ask this question actually, but I want you to talk more about SALT online.
Okay. So this came as a result of I published the book first before I knew that I wanted to get into publishing. So SALT basically is an independent publishing house that works with artists, writers, and thinkers to sort of collaborate and create printed matter for archival reasons. So whether that's zines, whether that's actual full artist books, monographs, more indie publications sort of thing. And I think that it sort of calls to people or amplifies voices somewhat on the periphery, however you sort of take that. Looking at the intersection of obviously race and gender, but technology and culture, and sort of how like when you think of like the Harlem Renaissance, it wasn't just the people making the thing, it was the people, like the Schomburg Center wouldn't exist if people didn't collect that like ephemera and memorabilia. Oh, that's the album. So yeah, I think that like it was a decision to be that sort of casual archivist, and I'm really invested in the safekeeping of voices of people of color, because that matters to me. I think that like we don't get as much funding, and also like Zora Neale Hurston says that like basically if you don't tell somebody you're in pain, like they'll kill you and say that you enjoyed it. Like I'm making a deliberate decision to take care of other people's work, because I think it's important. I mean, as a fine artist, I was feeling kind of disillusioned about the work that I was making, because understanding that for me, my purpose is collaborative, that I enjoy feeding and responding with people. It's sort of like an introverted extrovert sort of thing. So working with people that I believe in what they're doing and finding a way to, like I have 2 books coming out in spring. One with Miss Christina, who's there. She's an illustrator. She also went to SVA. And we're doing a publication, I guess, based off of right now the theme of balance and sort of what that means, like a psychological analysis of what that can mean politically, what that can mean spiritually, mentally, physically, in the real world, and like the psyche, sort of defining and deconstructing what that means. And then also I have another woman I'm working with who is an SVA alum, who just is now finishing up her MFA at Parsons. Ali Mama Rashid, she is a Kuwaiti visual artist who sort of, her work revolves around her being like a Muslim woman and a Muslim woman sort of like fluctuating between East and West, and what she calls a liminal space. So it's that sort of like point of transition that between what we understand and what we know from like a historical and lived experience and what we do not yet know, being that we're currently moving into a future that can feel kind of hopeless, but you gotta do it. So we have a book with her coming out in spring, and I think that like moving forward, I just want to work with people that I believe in, and have a space that you can rifle through the archives. Yeah.
That's pretty dope. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's dope. Well, yeah, that's actually pretty much all the questions that I did have for you, because I did want them to hear about SALT. I think it's important. But is there anything else that you wanted to add on, or you guys want to wait for the Q&A? So now we have, so I'm just gonna show some more of Raquel's works, by the way, for you guys to see some awesomeness. Okay, and then now we're gonna go to Naj. So, you already spoke about what made you want to create Ethel's Club. But I actually want to ask this question. Yeah, I'm looking at some of these questions, I'm like, nah, but then I see some and I'm like, word? Okay. Like this one, why did you feel like now was the time to create Ethel's Club?
Well, 2 reasons. One was a personal, somewhat selfish need for a place like this. And when I started looking for it, and I'm really good at Googling, I couldn't find it. I am, right? Oh, thank you. I couldn't find it. And so I was like, there are all of these other sort of, membership, social clubs, these sort of third spaces that cater to women, that cater to people who care. Their identity is more aligned in wellness for people who want to be around other wealthy people. They all had sort of an identity politic that they were kind of tacking themselves onto. And I felt like no one was doing that for people that looked like me and people that were looking for the same things that I was looking for. So I kept looking, I kept researching, and then when I couldn't find it, I was like, fine, I'll do it. But only because of my background in sort of that tech and hospitality space. I had also seen this sort of shift, I think, in our language, in our language as a society of, people feeling comfortable saying, I am this, I identify as such, and I want to be around like-minded people. And how could I kind of fit what I was building into that narrative? And so I felt like now was the time because I had spoken to a lot of people who also were looking for it. We did a lot of customer and sort of user research beforehand. And it was the type of thing where I sort of brought it up to someone and they were like, how does this not exist already? And I was like, I know. I've been saying the same things. And then their follow-up thing was I had been looking for this forever. And from the day we started, the way the company is built has changed a lot in terms of our offering. But I think where we are now in terms of the company, now is the right time because now is the right time. That's kind of the best answer I have.
Okay. I'm reading through some of these questions. Someday. What has been or what is the most fun part about creating Apple's Club?
It's definitely trying to find the people who are going to take part in our programming and sort of help with our visual identity. So I can't remember if I said this, but a huge component of what we're building is it's a place to access the culture. So we're in talks with Yokata Museum to bring some sort of art aspect, and also with local artists and gallerists to do the same thing. But for me it's been fun because I think I've been introduced to this entire world that I had no idea existed. And it again was something that I was looking for where I was like, I want to be around more creative people, but where do creative people go? Where do they spend their time? And I think if you aren't already inside the very in-store world, which I'm assuming most of you probably are, I'm 100% not. I mean, I am now from all of my research on Instagram. But it's just been cool kind of seeing all of the things that are out there. And now that I've sort of planted our flag and started talking with different people, they've introduced me to things that I didn't know. And so it's like every day I'm learning about a new artist, a new designer, a new musician, just something cool that someone in New York City is building. It's just been very heartwarming that there's always cool stuff happening. I know we live in New York and that's always what happens here, but it wasn't necessarily a part of my personal life prior to starting this. I think definitely opening myself up to that world has been really fun.
Yeah, I am actually, but I feel like this question goes for all of you. So I'm going to ask you first, and then if any of you feel that you want to add on to that for your own personal take, you can. What has been the most difficult part of building a company, or for you guys, organizations, pillars, publishing something?
Outside of fundraising, which is just kind of boring. You're constantly pitching and you always have to be smiling and telling the right story. So that part's more annoying. The most difficult part is there's so many talented people in New York. There are actually so many, it's insane, and the amount of resumes I've gotten and people who've reached out, I love everybody. But if I were to hire people, we'd have a 100-person company. But I think that's been the hardest. I had someone email me today and her, I literally wrote back, I'm obsessed with you, but I can't hire you. I don't have the funds. We already have someone doing that job, but the people I see in this world, I'm just is tight that there are this many talented people in the world. And I've actually been looking for people to pass them off to because I'm like, I want you to go farther in your life. So that's been hard from a personal perspective. I also tend to like everybody. So that's its own learning curve. I know it's bad. I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to fire anybody. This is gonna be a whole thing.
Gotta keep you.
But you just sit there and don't say anything.
So what about you three? Have you like come across any difficulties?
I mean, I think that's with anything in life. I feel like if you care enough about something, whether that's like your career or like personal things, there's always going to be bumps in the road. Like, the only thing that I can think of is, which we brought up earlier, is the idea of like imposter syndrome. Like, it really is something that you have to work on every day. Like, even creating a mission statement for what I'm doing takes a lot of like energy to feel. Like, sometimes you wonder, like, are you capable of doing the thing? But you are capable. And it's like you have to put in that effort to remind yourself, because ultimately you don't want to wait on the validation of other people to give that to you. So I think, like, for me, it's 100%, because this is an independent venture, a passion of mine. It's like feeling up to doing the work and feeling like that I can do it the best as I'm capable of.
I feel like anything's gonna be hard, and as soon as you come to terms with that, it gets easy.
Wait, hold up, what? Say that again.
And I know I said this earlier, but learning is important. Whenever I'm stuck or get anxious, I have to remind myself that it's literally because I don't know what I'm doing. And I get on YouTube University or something, I get a book, and I learn until I feel all right to go on to the next step.
I'm going to tack something on to what Raquel said in terms of, you know, waking up every day and realizing that you can do it. I think it's also important to realize that you're the right person to be doing it. Mm-hmm. Like, you are doing that specific thing for you because you were meant to.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, that I struggle with because I'm like, anyone else could start this company. I don't think I'm some kind of genius, but I have to remind myself that no one did, you know, and that I'm in this position because I was supposed to be. And I think we can kind of all attest to that. And like kind of using that to backflip off of in terms of like now I feel confident and kind of building into that.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you say that, like, you have an idea of the person you want to be in a couple years, like the adult you want to be, or like, I know the woman that I want to grow into, but it's on like on the base level, you're already that person because you want to be that person. Like, you wouldn't have that in you. That wouldn't be interesting or important to you if you didn't have some of those qualities or have from the beginning. It's just a matter of like doing work.
I am realizing a lot of things right now. I'm like, should I just walk out and go home and just go like this? Okay. Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. Next we have Tia. Sorry, I'm doing the flippy thing again. Sorry if anyone's like, what's the word for? Yes, that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
I forgive you. Oh, thank you.
I promise that was the last time. Tia. Tell us about your recent illustrated and edited book, My Flipping Yaya.
Okay. My Flipping Yaya is a book about a young girl who learns gymnastics from her grandmother. And this book came about because my mom just became a grandmother, and she's also a gymnastics coach. She was my coach. She was my brother's coach. She coaches a lot of kids now. She's traveling all around, doing this book tour and living her best life. But yeah, so she found out she was going to be a grandma, and this was kind of her way of continuing on this legacy and showing him what she does and giving him a piece of what we all got to have growing up. So my childhood, like I said, she was my coach, and making this book was so much fun because it was like literally illustrating my childhood. It was, I was using references from when I was younger. Also some other gymnastics references like from my current job, but yeah, I had a lot of fun making this book. You should check it out. It's on Barnes & Noble and Syllabus.
For the next question that I wanted to ask you, well, I mean, you kind of already answered that. Tell us about your pen pieces, because they seem to incorporate a mysticism of some sort. Like, can you explain more on that and like the symbolisms that you incorporate within your pieces?
Well, so when I was in grad school, I was experimenting with drawing and painting and combining the two together and trying to figure out what these marks and what this pen and like what all of that meant to me in terms of the human body, in terms of my blackness, and in terms of my womanhood. And so there was like a lot of cool things that I found out about the pen and a lot of things that I enjoyed, like the copper reflection, and that made me think of like energy and electricity within the body. And so from there, I continued to explore these marks, and which also became reminiscent of our nervous system, and talking about how our hair is an extension of that. So it's ultimately something that you should be proud of rather than something that you should shun away from. And so yeah, the pen marks turned into a combination of pen and painting to just pen, and now it turns into mark making into paint. So yeah, I had to go back to the drawing board several times before I could get to the work that you see now.
Wow. And I was just about to ask about that, the paintings. Did you want to speak more on them?
Sure. Yeah.
We can go back to
So my most recent work, I really like to talk about texture and hair and DNA and cells and cosmos and how everything is connected, and ultimately we're all connected and beautiful and great. But yeah, so I experiment with a lot of different types of paper and oil paints on paper and marking into these paintings. And I also like to talk about hair and how as African people, there's so much sacred geometry and there's so many dimensions within our hairstyles. And so that's also something that I wanted to talk about within my work. So I started marking into my paintings with different types of combs and brushes and different things like that that'll ultimately create these new figures and forms that I've been making now. And some of them, like I said before, I teach a movement and mark making class, so there's like a lot of movement and dance within the larger scale works too.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Sorry, I was just like looking at the smaller screen with all of her pieces, but thank you for that. Now I'm just going to open up the floor for any questions that you guys may have for these amazing women. I know you do. Yes.
My question is for Nala.
Speak up.
Okay. What does a team look like in terms of like you trying to build your business from the ground up and kind of like still in the first stages?
Right.
I know you're talking about like getting so many resumes and things like that, but it seems like a lot to take on by yourself. So.
Yeah. 100%. Right now, the way we've stacked the team is with a lot of boring sort of admin corporate jobs, which are boring. So, we need like a CFO, someone to kind of handle the operations of the space. The cooler jobs are, we're actually interviewing a couple people now for sort of a programming position. So their job would be to curate the programming in each space. So finding the artists for the installations at the space that we've identified in Brooklyn. there's this huge wall off the terrace that can be used as a what's what I'm looking for, as an empty space. You can put graffiti onto it. And
As a canvas?
yes, thank you.
Okay.
I was like, what is that word? As a canvas. And so finding the correct artist to bring into the space to kind of have like seasonal installations over there, installations within the space, any kind of speakers, musicians, again, really trying to curate and build a tight brand. So that's a really cool position. We've had some like insane candidates. One of them's a guy who like completely put on Afropunk since the beginning, and I was like, I want you. He's like, I've gotten a lot of offers, and I'm like, I can see. And so that one's cool. You know, having someone to kind of just man our membership, which I think is really important to me, having that intense kind of customer service is important, obviously. So building that out, a brand person who's going to strategically make sure the brand filters through the programming, through the imagery on the website, the social media, I mean, all of those kind of components. Those are the main two I'm focused on right now, just because I feel like they're so important in terms of getting this right to sell it. Because if everyone's like, this is a cool concept, but like, I don't really get it, and it's also ugly, it's not gonna go super well. So kind of having the right sort of creative geniuses in the space to build that, because that's not me, but I'm pretty good at finding those people. So those are the main two right now, and then once we grow, we'll probably have like a ton of other kind of positions. Right now there's a cafe and a bar in the space, so kind of making sure that's done. But I think right now, as we raise capital, investors want to see like a vision, right? They want to see that when there are 10 locations, what those are going to look like and feel like. They don't really care that there's going to be some accounting person. So I'm trying to build that out for them as well.
Anyone? Yes, Ashanti.
Raquel, if we were interested in purchasing your book, where would we?
So, we sold out of our first
Sorry.
but, so the website is being redesigned now. So we will have an official launch in later spring. And I think right now, because that's something I'm thinking about too, because that is more of a distribution sort of question. Am I keeping inventory, or am I sort of outsourcing that? Like Amazon does something like that, Barnes & Noble does something like that. But yeah, right now our inventory is sold out, which is a blessing. But moving forward, contacting me directly is probably your best bet. But I think ideally we do want to get into certain bookstores, and particularly like printed matter specific, like art related bookstores on a domestic and international level, because that's a huge market. But yeah.
Maybe social clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hi. I'm right here.
Did anybody else have any questions? Alana.
My question is for Tia. Do you see yourself illustrating more books, or was this like more interesting to you because it was like on a personal level, because of your mom and like your childhood? Do you see yourself doing more of that, or do you kind of just want to focus on like your own?
Well, my Flippin' Yaya is going to be a collection of books, so I'm working on the next book now. I think that I would love to turn my paintings into a book and like a collection of works that I have all together. I do have an idea in mind that I just have not executed yet, but it deals with basically ways you can heal your body through movement, and illustrating that, and painting that, and then putting that into a collection and printing it out. So that is a goal for the future.
I am interested. Does anybody else have any more questions? Yes,
I have
Marvin.
2 quick questions for Rock. I have 2 questions. One, do you consider yourself an archivist?
There's certain things that I'm interested in that I can't technically put down because I'm not trained. Like I don't have a library science degree or certification. But I think I'm a casual archivist.
And I think, just judging by your work and then seeing some of the things that, in full disclosure, we collaborated with this amazing project that wouldn't have gotten done if it wasn't for her genius. So I just wanted to let everybody know. I just want to say that. Professionally. But so what I was gonna say is that like understanding that you have an like insatiable appetite for knowledge, and I wanted to kind of ask you how important, with all of the, I guess, pitfalls that society places on Black women particularly, how important do you think that idea of like curiosity and an almost fearless search for knowledge is important to Black women and even Black girls? Because I got like a lot of little cousins, so.
Yeah, I think it's funny that like us sitting up here, having like you sent these questions, but we haven't like had any sort of conference about what we're gonna say. Most of us are like, just believe in yourself. Like it's okay. Like that says something that like, yeah, it says something about the way that you've been raised, the way that you've been taught to sort of think about your creative output and sort of like what's the hierarchy of worth and value in this society. And I think that somebody very wise also told me that you should follow your curiosity, that what you will find, whether that's like your career or like a passion that you figure out a way to monetize or incorporate in your life in a very fulfilling and satisfying way, it's about like finding what drives you and stepping fully into that and not holding back. And you know, you're always going to be struggling, you're always going to struggle with whether or not you're capable of what you're destined to do, because there's literal, like that, the project that you had put up of the ice cream, like that was an advertising campaign I did for a parody ice cream company called Sassy Mammy, and it's about like consumption of the body and everything. But like thinking about like, I'm putting my brain power to advertise for the destruction of people who look like me. Like there's literal jobs that do that today. Like there's always gonna be like some rich, probably white person who has employed somebody to make a campaign that makes you question yourself and doubt yourself. And not to say that therapy isn't important, but then like you have to spend money, you have to, in a capitalist society, you have to spend money to sort of like deprogram yourself from what they've already put in your head. And like I just think that finding like-minded people and like having honest conversations about that is super important, because we're all struggling. Like you don't get more. It's not that like you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're an adult and like everything is clear. You just get better. I think the people that you admire are just better at not putting that on Instagram, like their insecurities online. You know, they have somebody to manage them that's like, you know, only post the pretty pictures. But I think that having those real conversations are important. And having people on your team who also believe in what you're doing. It's just, you know, like, those people. Great question.
Anybody else have any more questions? Yes.
I have a question for Ms. Naj. I was wondering, will the Alpha Club space also move in the direction of teaching and events in the tech scene?
You know, this is the first space we can we're nimble, we can do a lot of things. Because I come from the tech world, it doesn't necessarily drive me like it used to. This specific idea does, because I believe in it in a way that, you know, being a head of growth at a fintech company that's literally driving the capitalist society that you were talking about, didn't really help me, sleep at night, this actually does, because I feel like, not that I'm saving lives, but I'm definitely helping them in a more positive fashion. So I don't love the tech scene. I prefer to have a space that I think actually nurtures people, and I think I get that feeling from the art and culture world. I think that having a space that makes that their ethos and brand mission is unique. And I think trying to sell two different things is confusing for people. I think you want to, at least out of the gate, have a very clear value proposition, which is if you're looking to, again, comfortably gather around black and brown, like-minded people who really love art, really like music, kind of into podcasts, you've come to the right place. But if all of our members actually want tech things, we'll probably get a couple of tech people to come. But I think there are better people out there doing a good job of kind of that entrepreneur tech angle. I don't think there's anyone doing a good job of this right now. That's kind of why I decided to step into it.
Does anybody else have Ashanti?
From Daniels. So for artists who just now experimenting with mixed media and for someone who has and is dealing with it, what advice would you give me?
Well, I mean, I guess the main thing is experiment. Like, you gotta try things, you gotta, the more experimenting you do, the more you'll learn. Like, when I first came to SVA, I was like, I'm strictly an oil painter, don't try to change me, this is it. And luckily I had some really great peers to push me out of my comfort zone. But that's the main thing, is getting out of your comfort zone. If you're painting, maybe try to paint on something other than canvas, or if you're drawing, try to play with different types of colors, or pens, or you just gotta really literally be a child and play around and have fun with it. There are no rules. I learned that the hard way.
Does anybody else have any questions you would like to ask? Yes, Osa.
Again, thank you all for being very kind to the child. Yeah, helped me with my anxiety. And also, it's really real about, what do you call it?
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I also call it when you don't believe you belong. As a young mother, spaces like this, I'm always like, I need to get babysitting, I need to get babysitting. And if it wasn't for the other caretaker in his life, I wouldn't have been here. So I think this is also revolutionary, and it needs to be a part of more art-based spaces, because as soon as you become a mother, you are X'd out of so many spaces, because people are like, I want to come and focus, and if the child is present, I can't focus. I'm like, nah, not really, actually. If you think about all the artists that actually mean something to me, they were parents, and they were doing it, they didn't know how to put other things. But anyway, side note, that was me getting my anxiety out. Dime. No, yo no dije mala palabra. Okay, pues déjame hablar que yo soy más grande que tú. But my kind of question is going back to, because I came yesterday to see the open studio space. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm from the Bronx, we really don't have anything like this. The street is the art scene. And then the cops come and knock you up. So I thought I was gonna be wowed, and I'm not trying to if y'all studio was there, I'm not I'm not shitting on you. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not. But I feel like the duty of the artist is to start conversation, and if that's not what we're doing, then what are we making art for? And this is someone that I didn't believe I was an artist till literally 4 or 5 years ago. And I noticed it because of the way I dress. I couldn't leave the crib without feeling comfortable. And I told my friend, oh, I'm not an artist. She's like, yeah, you are. Every single day, So my question to y'all is, how do you continue to make art that will be impactful to the world? And I know that was a part of it, but I wanted to be more specific and is it a part of your thought process when you're you know, the world needs this, right? Like yours is something that the world needs. You knew there was a gap that needed to be filled. But is that something that you wake up every morning, right? And like we are all creative, we are all artists, right? Like from this young age, they're more creative than we are. How many of us are too shy to do everything that you're doing, you know? So like, do you every single day in the morning, like when do you wake up? Is that a part of your process, or when you're creating, is it a part of your process of being like the world needs this and I need this for myself? So it's a long question, but I know you all understood because you're all going. So yeah.
One like main person I talk about when I talk about my art is this young girl who I collaborated with when I was doing my undergrad at OU. We did like a pen pal collaboration between students at Scribble Art School, which is here in New York, and with us at OU. And so we would make a mark, send it to them, they would make a mark, send it back to us. These kids were significantly younger than us. They were like elementary school kids. And ironically, I ended up being partnered with this young girl who was being bullied in school because of her skin complexion. And her story really just like, her story was like the main motivation for my thesis show then. The main reason why I mainly paint women and Black women, and because her story is literally my story. And growing up as a gymnast, those were like my biggest issues, and there's still issues today for young female athletes, Black female athletes, especially in gymnastics and dance, who are struggling with the insecurities of their Blackness. And so I wanted it to be my duty to talk about the importance of their Blackness and why they shouldn't be insecure. And so every time I walk into the studio and look at my work and try to think of all these other little girls who I've coached and who've been rejected because their butts are too big, or because they don't like their hair, or, you know, my little cousins. So just thinking about that everyday struggle that these young Black girls are always facing, and at such a young age, and it continues to follow you as an adult. So yeah, that's my main motivation, I guess.
I mean, I think that, and I don't want to speak for all artists, but I think if you're creating something true, everybody has a story like that. It takes different shapes and how it drives you, but I think that when you have that kind of being the fuel, you'll never come out with art that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because you are creating it for something real. And I think that that usually trickles through to the audience. I mean, for me, it's more, I've had a lot of jobs where I, you know, Friday through Monday morning, I never thought about it, literally at all. It's like, check, Friday, 5 p.m. bye. And with this, it's literally, I'm consumed by it. I on my way here, took pictures. I walked by this furniture store and like sent them to my architecture team. Like, it's constantly on my mind. Even with these people, I'm like, oh, her art, gotta email her. You know what I mean? Like, I feel so strongly about what I'm building because I'm building it for something that's tangible and real and for real humans. And so I think when real humans see that, you interact with it a little bit differently. And it's not just empty strokes or, you know, a product that nobody cares about where you're trying to make money. I think it doesn't resonate as well.
I think for me, like the bigger picture is sort of like, I mean, my interest is record keeping for other people, but I think that for me personally, like I have a vested interest in sort of leaving something tangible behind of my own self. I think that you never know where life is going to take you, and I have a tendency to psych myself out of doing anything because I can see a point of doing it. But the most beautiful things that I've encountered and people that I've worked with also feel the same way and don't realize that they've been collecting information that would be helpful for so many people if they just had the confidence to like let it out and put it out there. to leave something behind.
I kind of answered this earlier.
We also have conversations all day.
Yeah, I always create, or I always try to ask myself if the world needs this. But mostly really because, like, all right, we all need a job, right, to survive, right? I'm not gonna get them off the political tangents, but but we all need a job to survive, right? And we all go to work, but like it's human nature to create, right? And that's our power being taken from us daily. So I kind of like to think of it as like taking back my power by creating something that I want to see in the world, right? Rather than giving my hours to somebody else's vision, somebody else's pocket.
I was like, yeah, I forgot I was up here.
Yes, does anybody else? Go ahead, girl, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, Raquel, you were saying how the woman that you see, the person that you see in the future, right?
Yes.
As why am I losing my word? The person that you see yourself being in the future, that you are already that individual. So for all of you, what does that woman look like?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think that like the thing that I'm most focused on right now in terms of like manifesting in my own life is like stepping with that fear. Because I'm not a public speaker. Like I'm not somebody who can't do it, but like I'm a very stressed person, like before most things. So like it takes a lot like for me to even, like I had to ask people if I should do this panel when you asked. I was like, I don't know. So for me, like the type of woman that I want to like grow into and be, present tense, future tense, and onward, is somebody who does things despite negativity. You know, I don't really think that anybody could tell me anything, but like you don't realize how much of that you really do internalize. And seeing that there's so many people out here who are doing such amazing things, who don't get the spotlight or the any sort of accolades until like after they're dead, is unacceptable to me. And I don't want to be that person who, when you wake up at like 50, you realize that you wasted a lot. Like my mom's a chaplain, so she speaks with people like at the end of their life. And a lot of things that people say is that like, I wish, like I don't want to live my life with regrets. Like everything is a learning opportunity, and I don't want to realize down the road that like I let some sort of abstract, nebulous fear stop me from opening my mouth and doing what I gotta do. So I think like definitely, if that means my hands are shaking or I need something to fidget with while I do my work, you know, just getting it done. It's like important.
I agree 100% with that. Same thing. Just being unapologetic about who you are and like being okay with that, like, and being confident in that. I think that's like a constant work in progress for me. But I guess my future me, when I have it all together, will be like, you know, I'll be able to voice whatever I feel without any regrets or without any, you know, apologies. Just, it is how I feel about it. I don't care how anyone else thinks. And I want to be able to get to that point with my art where I'm talking to people say this room is full of white people, and I'm just like, this is what it is, this is how I feel, and you're gonna accept it. And like she was, even if I'm like fidgeting or like, you know, have a bunch of anxiety, I'm able to get through that. And so I think that's a constant struggle, but something that I really want to just be confident in when I'm there.
And I think like the like falling into success, like through the failure thing that you were talking about, is super important too, because nothing's gonna get done if you're too scared to try. It's like you have to, something that I've been trying to tell myself is like showing up for yourself in your life, like really like advocating on your behalf, and that can be very difficult to be tender with yourself, but I mean, it can sound kind of nihilistic, but like you have two options, like, because you're gonna die anyway. It's either like you do it or you don't. Like no one else, even if you have people in your life that you care about their opinions, like we're all hard. At the end of the day, like you're the last person that you have to hang out with at the end of the day, like before you go to bed. And choosing to show up in your life in a way that, like, if nothing else, you followed your drive. It may not have gone how you wanted, but like you don't owe anybody an answer or an apology if you're really moving in your truth. So it's like the decision to fail with purpose and keep moving. Yeah, I think we're all trying to.
Does anybody else have any more questions they would like to ask? Me neither. Okay, cool. Do you guys have any questions? No? Okay, cool. So I guess this concludes the panel. I would like to thank you all for being here and for wanting to participate and for also sharing with us so much. Like, I really oh, wait, no. That's you.
I just want to know, where can we follow you all?
You can write it on the chalkboard.
Yes,
That's a good idea. Full of good ideas in this room.
I got it. Yeah.
Oh, yes, we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Louise, for putting this together.
Yes.
Thank you.